At our wedding, my husband proudly announced, "I'm going to make my wife manage with only $50 for groceries every month." The joyous and blissful atmosphere froze in an instant. I was stunned. "I'm so lucky I scored myself a cheap housemaid," he added. As I realized his intention, it felt like everything was going dark before my eyes. Suddenly, a stern voice echoed throughout the venue. "Is that all you wanted to say, you bastard?" My father had stood up and was approaching us. My husband, condescendingly, said, "Don't get cocky, old man." My husband, who was looking down on my father, had no idea what was waiting for him. "My name is Sarah. I met my husband Jack in college. We were in the same year. We lost contact after graduation, but when we were 24, he threw a reunion party. That night, I drank a little too much and felt sick. Jack looked after me and told our classmates not to force me to drink. He had matured a lot since his wild college days and treated me really nicely and carefully, as if I were a precious gem or a princess. He confessed that he had actually liked me since we were in the same class, and that he threw the reunion because he wanted to see me again. We soon started dating, and after a few months, I moved into his apartment. When we were 25, he proposed, and we got married. It turns out Jack was the heir to a big corporation. He never boasted about it, but people often told me, "Wow, you've hit the jackpot." His parents, whom we met when we announced our marriage, seemed really nice, and I felt relieved. My parents were also happy about my marriage with Jack. My father, a small business owner who started his business when he was young and had his share of hardships, was probably relieved that I wouldn't have to struggle. From then on, it was fun planning our wedding together, booking the venue, and picking out my wedding dress. One day, with our wedding just a few months away, Jack said something unexpected at dinner. "Sarah, your cooking is always delicious. I think you'd do great running the house as a full-time housewife." Huh? But I was planning on working even after getting married. I was surprised. My plan was to continue working, and Jack had never once said he wanted me to quit. "It's fine if you work part-time on the side while doing housework and looking after kids. I'm sure you want some pocket money too. But I've been working hard at my job this whole time, and I want to continue working full-time. I need to start training a successor for the company. Leave the money-making to me, and I'd like you to focus on being a homemaker," he said, while cheerfully munching on his dinner as if he was proud of himself for being the sole breadwinner. Jack continued, "We don't even have kids yet. Even if we do, I want to continue working. I can't put all the burden on you." "How? Why?" My persistence seemed to upset Jack, and he suddenly frowned at me. "I won't slack off on housework or raising kids, please," I found myself saying, desperately wanting to keep working. Jack responded to my words with a bright smile. "Okay, if you insist, that's fine. They say women feel uneasy when they lose connection with society. So go ahead and do your best with housework and childcare." I was relieved that he readily agreed. However, his words "do your best with housework and childcare" didn't quite sit right with me. When I talked about this with my friends, they replied, "Jack cares about you, Sarah. He's a good husband." That made me feel happy, making me feel cherished and easing my concerns. After that, we sometimes discussed our future. "Sarah, you're such a strong, independent woman who wants to continue working even after getting married. I'm glad to have a woman like you as my wife." His kind words always made me happy. I should also take part in some of the housework too. "All right, I'll handle the household accounts and hand you the living expenses, so we'll work with that expense every month." I always thought managing finances was a woman's job, so I was deeply moved when Jack offered to do it. "Oh, I don't have to do everything by myself." That's a relief. And so came our wedding day. With many guests blessing us, the ceremony went smoothly, and I was overwhelmed with joy. Then an incident broke out at the end of the ceremony. "I'm going to make my wife work with only $50 for groceries every month." During his speech, Jack suddenly made this absurd statement. I was stunned, my mouth wide open in disbelief. The other guests started murmuring, and the festive mood instantly turned ice cold. "Oh, I'm so lucky to have such a cheap maid," he said, grinning at me, oblivious to the fact that he just ruined our wedding. What on earth is he talking about? I was horrified to see him change so abruptly. I never agreed to such an absurd thing as $50 a month for groceries. "You agreed when I said I'll manage the finances, didn't you?" "Huh? Well, yes," I stammered. I couldn't believe that this was his plan all along. I blanked out, suddenly realizing that he might have been deceiving me all this time. I let my wife say she wants to do all the housework and childcare, he continued. While working full-time, I'm sure she'll be able to handle all the chores perfectly and make nutritious, filling meals for just $50 a month. Jack continued to spout nonsense. Hearing this, I quickly covered his make with my hand. Don't just say whatever you want. I won't accept this. What's wrong? Didn't I tell you to do your best with the housework and childcare? He responded. Aren't you supposed to help out too? I never said anything like that. We can't live together like this, I argued. Suddenly, Jack's expression changed, and with a terrifying look in his eyes, he whispered in my ear, We're bound by this ceremony. It's too late to cancel the marriage now, right? We've already turned in our marriage certificate. Do you really want to get divorced? You're threatening me? Quit messing with me. I never thought I would argue with Jack, to whom I'd pledged my future on what should have been the best day of my life. Filled with regret and anger, I felt my face heat up and tears well up in my eyes. This is what I signed up for. I can't believe I'm going to be misused like a servant by this man. I now deeply regretted marrying Jack. Just then, someone abruptly stood up from their seat and approached us. Is that all you wanted to say, you bastard? It was my father, Robert. His temples were throbbing and his gaze was intense. I could tell he was infuriated on my behalf. How dare you treat someone's daughter like this in front of her parents? The tone in his voice froze the already tense atmosphere in the venue. Our wedding guests held their breath, watching the stare down between my father and Jack. What's your problem? Don't get so cocky, Jack retorted, looking down on my father with an evil expression I had never seen before, which made me shiver. My father is the president of a major corporation and I'm his successor. A small business owner of a company I've never even heard of shouldn't act all high and mighty. When I introduced my father to Jack, he praised my father, saying he was a great man despite the fact that his company was small. He even told me, I fell in love with you and your family background won't change my feelings for you. In the end, he had just deceived me with sweet words. Just as Jack was about to confront my father again, a loud shattering sound of glass shocked the whole venue. We all turned to see what had happened. There stood Jack's father, his hand shaking uncontrollably, and his face turning an alarming shade of blue. In stark contrast to Jack's demeanor, his father had a look of sheer panic on his face. Idiot! Stop it, Jack. Don't you dare cross that man, he shouted. What are you scared of? We could crush this little company in an instant and toss it aside, right? Jack mocked. In response, his father shouted in a trembling voice, That gentleman is one of our major shareholders. Huh? This old guy? Jack, with a baffled look, alternated his gaze between his own father and mine. While my father's company was indeed small in scale, he had started it himself and received compensation such as executive remuneration and dividends from stocks. Moreover, he held stocks in companies other than his own, and if he sold them, he would have assets amounting to several $100 million. Among these stocks were those of the company owned by Jack's father. That's why my father, as a major shareholder, had the right to influence the company's management policies. When Jack learned this fact, he was stunned and blurted, So did you tell me to date Sarah because you wanted to get your hands on her father's wealth? It's more than that, his father replied, seeking something greater out of this marriage but not telling Jack, who was full of himself. Jack's father had his eyes on my father's patents. He was currently paying a significant amount of money to my father's company to use that patent, but if Jack and I were to marry, he would no longer have to pay for it and could use it freely. Patents? And you were told to date me? Jack, you never actually liked me. What kind of nonsense is that? I'm the son of a major corporation CEO. If it weren't for my dad's requests, I would never be with you. What the hell? I truly loved you. Actually, I was supposed to be set up with a beautiful heiress. Instead, I've been putting up with a mediocre girl like you all this time. You should be grateful, Jack spat, knocking a flower from the table and scattering white petals everywhere. Jack, please don't talk anymore, his father pleaded, pale as a ghost, trembling like he was seconds away from fainting. But that was understandable. His son wouldn't stop making remarks that would infuriate the last person he'd want to cross. Shut up. It's all your fault, Dad. Just as a father-son argument was about to break out, my father's voice echoed once again. That's enough. For a moment, the room fell silent. Sarah, what are you going to do? Do you still want to marry this kind of man? My father gently asked me. I quietly shook my head. I can't be happy marrying this sort of man. A man who would treat me as a maid, trying to have me live on $50 for food every month. I just couldn't bear the thought of being with him. This is economic abuse, isn't it? Jack, I will sue you. I'm also going to annul our marriage, so be prepared for that. What? Are you okay with being a divorcee? Well, you're going to be a divorcee too, so we might as well share the pain. I won't hold back anymore. Since I realized he had no love for me, I had completely lost feelings for him. I'd rather be a divorcee than be exploited under such ridiculous conditions. When I firmly stated my decision, my father also nodded in agreement. That's probably for the best. As for your company, we will take appropriate measures. I wonder what will happen to your company from now on. When my father said this with a terrifying look on his face, it seemed Jack finally realized the gravity of the situation. He fell on his knees, begging for mercy with his father. Our foolish son has been terribly rude. We promise to educate him well to avoid any future incidents. Please just don't cancel the marriage. Sarah was wrong. Please forgive me. I'll let you do as you like with housework, childcare, and work. I won't limit your food expenses anymore. You can even hire a maid and relax at home if you want. We can hear all about your grievances in court. Dad, let's go home. I apologized to all the guests and returned all their gift money. Then I canceled the wedding. Afterwards, thanks to the skilled lawyer hired by my father, we managed to sue Jack in court. The cause of our broken engagement was determined to be Jack's fault, and he was forced to bear the full cost of our wedding fees. Plus, I also received compensation. Moreover, because he failed miserably at securing a convenience marriage and humiliated his father by having him beg on his knees, he was abandoned by his parents. There was no way he would ever sit in the CEO chair again. Out of desperation, Jack caused a ruckus at work and got in trouble with the police. From what I've heard, he got fired in the end. He's become worthless, aimlessly living life with no solid job. Of course, there's no chance for him to ever get set up with an heiress anymore. As a result of deceiving me and getting abandoned, his life became miserable. As for me, I ended up being a divorcee, but my father introduced me to a sincere young employee working at his company. I'm currently dating him, and we're planning on getting married next year.